why does a continent with so many powerful women have so few in between? Is patriarchy the only reason why African women are not in power? Or is there more to the story? I mean, Africa has got an array of queens, warriors, revolutionaries. So why is it that modern politics is still a man's game? Don't you find all of this suspicious? I certainly do. So let's discuss. Hello, good people. Welcome to this amazing episode that we're about to have. Some pretty exciting things that we will be discussing, as you've seen for the thumbnail. So I don't want to take any more of your time. Let's just get straight into the conversation. So the first segment of the show is going to deal with some of the major strides that have happened for African women in politics. And the first being the fact that Namibia has elected their first female president. Can we have a round of applause for Namibians? Also, kudos to the Namibians. I really feel like they did their big one this time around with the elections. Nandi Ndwata is somebody who's had an extensive career in politics. She has held numerous ministerial roles, some of them including foreign affairs, tourism, child welfare, as well as information. She's also known for being an advocate for women's rights, and one of her major key achievements was that she pushed for the Combating of Domestic Violence Act, and this was done in the National Assembly in 2002. According to Namibian media, Nandi is often criticized by her male colleagues. Is that really a surprise? For trying to ridicule the draft law and really reminding them that the SWAPO constitution does, in every sense of the word, condemn sexism, which I'm guessing is something that they still, do. And also finally, she just continues to be one who strides against this male dominated political space, which I think is just so great for young women who are also in politics. And she's going to be one to watch out for in terms of just like, I guess, what she will do in her first term as president. Secondly, the World Trade Organization Director General Ngozi Okojo Iweala has been formally elected for her second term. And as I was doing my research, apparently she didn't have any contest, which also just speaks volumes for how excellent and exceptional of a leader she has been. The 17-year-old Nigerian economist was, as I've just stated, the only candidate for this high-profile post, and her approval was given by, I guess, or if I remember correctly, 166 World Trade Organization members, including the United States, even though some people have been having some hesitancy of how things are going to pan out in terms of like trade with Donald Trump being re-elected as the president. The final big stride that happened was with Ghana, and they have had their first female vice president, Nana Jane. Similarly to Nandi, she has also got an extensive track record in terms of gender inclusivity and equality. She is a member, obviously, of the NDC, the National Democratic Congress Party, and I just loved what she said when she was having her acceptance speech, and I just want to highlight some of the few things that she said. So I'm just going to read here. She says, "My nomination has many implications. It means all of us are on board. The victory is for all of us, but especially for our daughters, for our youth, for our women. I know this is a big responsibility. My job was to open the door, and it doesn't end there. Actually, that is where the work begins." And I think what she said is just so timely and is so on point with what it is that I want to just try and discuss today when it comes to why it is that African women, as powerful as they are, as exceptional as they are not necessarily in the places of decision making and the places of power. And there has been a lot of extensive conversation about patriarchy and its role in doing this. So I want to try and take another perspective that I think maybe we don't necessarily discuss enough. The first being the historical legacy legacy of colonization. Many are aware or might not be aware of how the colonial administration was very intentional about reinforcing gender roles that made women to be subservient to men, but also secondly sidelined women in a lot of critical positions that determined how or societies were going to be run, that determined critical decisions in economy, and most importantly also in politics. I want to do an extensive deep dive on this, so I will have a separate video of basically the women's roles and participation before colonization, and then how that changed post-colonization. I really think when you look at the trajectory and the development of how this happened, you really will be shocked at how some of the things that we have accepted today as just the cultural and social norms of just women not leading were not actually the case when you look at African societies before colonization actually took place on the continent. The second thing that I think is also just a huge hindrance to women being able to take those positions of power is the limited access to education and resources. Why this is significant is that a girl child's inability to have adequate access to education and good quality education as that has got ripple effects for the rest of her lifetime, right? And we know that for you to be entrusted in an office of power or to be designated to a place that is going to have to make decisions for a number of people, you need to be an expert to a certain degree in that place that you'll be leading in. And I think that the girl child, not many girl children on the continent being deliberately excluded for a number of reasons to not get good proper education does affect their ability to lead. But also I think another thing we don't really talk about is that it also affects their confidence to lead. Knowledge is power. We know this, we understand this, and the more you know, the more confident you become in being able to lead others, in being able to effectively manage, in being able to, bring about solutions in times of crisis or anything of the like. Another issue that is not necessarily normally associated with women's lack of representation in places of power is gender-based violence and harassment. As a South African, I live in a country that is often termed as the rape capital of the world because our, GBV and femicide statistics are through the roof in such a scary manner. But also I've come to see, the more research that I'm doing, that this is not just a reality that's exclusive to South Africa alone. A lot of other African countries are experiencing the exact same problem of gender-based violence and harassment. This really, in so many ways, hinders women's confidence to be able to run for office, to be able to be in this very male-dominated space of politics. And another thing we must really just think about, let's just think about this practically, right? As one who's a South African, as one who follows South African politics, I know that political parties, especially when it's gearing towards whether it's like national or provincial times of elections, they have conferences that are long, 3 to 4 days at times, or even longer or shorter. And these are, at times, really, the meetings are ongoing. They're very extensive, right? So it's not just like a meeting that happens during the day and then you all close. Some of these, because of these meetings, because of the things that are having to be discussed and just the nature of these meetings, they can really run on late into the night. And, there have been various cases within South Africa where we have heard of young women reporting how them being at a particular party's conference or event had them be exposed to being sexually harassed, violated, even raped. This is an unfortunate reality that I don't necessarily think we think about when it comes to how it affects women and just their wanting, more than anything, just their wanting, their agency to them taking their agency to want to participate within leadership roles. Then another thing is intersectional challenges. Ooh, yeah, English there to the number. But basically, intersectional challenges are basically the multi-layered struggles, right? Okay, we're gonna edit that out. Intersectional challenges are basically the multi-layered challenges or hindrances that women have to face that men don't. So this could include everything from race, class, ethnicity, ageism, whatever the case. All of these serve as basic barriers that stop women from being able to effectively just go up the ladder of leadership. One example I will give is the issue of ageism. A lot of young women are often criticized and are limited by sexism when it comes to them wanting to participate in politics. I won't go deeper into that because I feel like we all know how that story ends. And the last issue that I want to cover is religion and religion's influence in politics, and also its the kind of narratives that religion has also put out when it comes to women. I want to do a disclaimer here. I will also do a separate video where I discuss basically how a lot of women have used their religious belief to advance and navigate their own leadership journey. And I think this is going to be really inspiring to just try and show how, in spite of how some of the scripts and the narratives that have been put out in religion have basically put women in places where they can only be good enough for being caregivers and not decision makers, they have gone against that tide and have really made phenomenal strides in their journey. So going back to this point, how does religion have an influence in politics? We know that Africa is a very religious continent. Basically, the two main religions being Islam and Christianity. Within these certain strands, there are a lot of patriarchal ideologies that are pushed, whereby women are just put or categorized into roles of them just simply being submissive and being supportive, and their only place being in the context of the family. But more than that, also religion does in certain countries have a heavy influence within politics, and we know this especially with countries that are very conservative in their nature, and so they have got very clear-cut legislation that does not promote the representation of women within politics, or rather promote them having an array of different leadership opportunities. So these are just some of the things that I have wanted to highlight that I think sometimes are not brought to the forefront when we have this discussion, and they often inform both the micro and the macro barriers that women face when it comes to them wanting to take up space in the area of politics. So if you have any other suggestions or any other opinions on this, I really look forward to hearing on them on the comment sections, because I really believe that the more we engage on this and the more people are informed, the easier it is to change. With that, let's move on to the second segment. Women across Africa. In this segment, we are going to be covering stories that deal with the fight and the plight of women across the continent. So I'm basically just going to be sharing some of the top stories that I found in terms of what's happening with African women within the past week, or just in recent weeks that maybe did not get a lot of coverage and I just think should be highlighted a bit more. The first topic I just want to cover is really one that's just so unfortunate, so heartbreaking, and it's gender-based violence. In Kenya, there has been a surge of gender-based violence. The country has reported over 7,000 cases of gender-based violence in the past year, and this has really sparked a national outrage and protest. If you have been following what's happening within the nation, you would have noticed that there's been a great deal of civil unrest when it comes to a lot of issues, one of these being GBV. And currently the government is really under a lot of pressure to implement more effective measures to protect women and address this escalating crisis. It's really unfortunate to know that this is not just something that's ongoing in Kenya. South Africa is facing similar realities, and one of the two major stories that came up just in this last week was the first being the fact that River Steynkamp's mother, June Steenkamp, gave a very stern warning to Oscar Pistorius' new girlfriend. So if you're not aware, Oscar Pistorius was one of our Olympic athletes, and over just a decade ago, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's about exactly 2 years ago, he murdered his girlfriend in their home on Valentine's Day. And the warning that she gave here to this young lady was that he had an anger issue and he still has an anger issue. And I think that this is just very it's a very profound and powerful statement, considering the fact that many a times when women do die in the hands of their significant others, it is often because of the end result of a angry outburst that they have had, which just results in the brutal violence of a life being lost. And this just a simple example of what this can look like was also in what has happened with a young man from KZN by the name of Spusiso Lawrence. He also killed his girlfriend, and he did a confession video after murdering her, stating his justifications for why it is that he killed her. Unfortunately, after he had posted the video, he then went on to also commit suicide. And this has, also within, South African social media, a lot of people have been engaged on the story. They've been watching the developments and really reading on what could have made this man do something as violent as this. So that is just in the case of gender-based violence, and just how this is a really growing epidemic and crisis within our continent. Also in Sudan, we know that there has been an ongoing civil war at the moment, and Sudanese women are facing a great deal of sexual violence. We know that when there is a lot of civil war, women and children often bear the brunt of this violence in the most cruel and brutal of ways. Also has been a lot of displacement of Sudanese women within the civil war that's currently happening there. There's an estimated 2.7 million women of reproductive age who are currently displaced in Sudan, and this causes or rather it exacerbates a lot of challenges that already women in conflict-ridden places have to deal with from a day to day. And these include access to healthcare, it includes them not having any economic stability, and also it just makes it more insecure for them when it comes to their own personal security. So that's just really, I think, sad and heartbreaking news that I was reading about when it comes to what's happening in Sudan, and particularly to Sudanese women. Trying to end things on a lighter note, there's a lot that's been happening in the area of financial inclusion. A lot of African women-led businesses are receiving significant funds, and the total number that have been receiving funds is 798, and they have been granted collectively a total of 3.99 basically they haven't granted 4 billion. Did I not just sound like I was singing advert there? I did, right? Anyways, they've been granted a total of $4 million US dollars to basically drive Africa's green transformation. This funding aims to empower female entrepreneurs and also support sustainable development and basically sustainable initiatives that are basically being led by women across the continent. And this particular story is really great because there is a whole issue of underrepresentation when it comes to women, underrepresentation of women who are able to receive venture capital funding, right? So we are told that businesses that are funded by women receive less than 5% of venture capital funding in Africa, and this has been the case for the last decade. So when you read stories of how African women are getting funding, it's always just very encouraging, especially also when you consider the fact that the informal economy, the backbone essentially of the informal economy, is African women who are SMMEs owners. So this is just nice to see how women within this informal spaces, whereby their businesses stay at the small scale, are getting the recognition that they deserve, that they need to basically ensure that their businesses are able to penetrate the formal market, but more importantly, they can have a longer lasting impact on their families, on their communities, because we know that when women are bringing in an income, it's not just for them, it's oftentimes for the whole household, and the whole household benefits in the form of just food security, education, to just point out a few. And so guys, that is everything in Women Across Africa for this week. We will wrap up the show by having a Woman of the Week, and Woman of the Week is basically going to highlight one woman who is doing significant things within their space. Often here I will insert some kind of video or some kind of insert of just a woman shining bright like the diamond that she is, right? And so in this week, this is the video that I'll be inserting, and just my call to action to everyone as I wish you all a good bye and farewell till we meet again is that, guys, stay informed, join the conversation, and please follow the channel for more insights on Africa's biggest stories when it comes to women's lived realities. Okay, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I can't wait to engage further with you guys in the comment sections. Like, comment, subscribe, and see you in a couple of days with more exciting news. Okay, bye.
20 years later, Petronile Vaweka vividly recalls her efforts to stop the war in the conflict-ridden province of Ituri, northeast of Democratic Republic of Congo. Despite the return of peace, renewed conflict emerged in 2017 and continues till this day. Mrs. Vaweka is now one of the 4 finalists for the Women Building Peace Award. For me, this prize will motivate me to work harder on strengthening the resilience of the Congolese people. Mrs. Vaweka is a mother of 6, a former teacher and journalist. In 1999, as conflict erupted between the Hema and Lendu communities in the Goldridge province, she created Foundation for Sustainable Peace with the goal of securing a ceasefire. All my life, I've always been the leader of men. It's strange, but that's how it is. When I'm in charge, there are more men than women, and all that, it's giving me a certain self-confidence, and with humanitarian work, I've learned to go beyond any emotions I might have had. I truly can't tell you how many times, but I've turned the situation around in my favor. Even when I had to free UN hostages, because there were UN hostages who were taken by armed groups, and I had to negotiate the release of women who were forced into slavery and child soldiers. Since 2008, Petronile has been based in Kinshasa, where she runs a women's center. The winner of the award is due to be announced on December 8th.